Good morning. My name is Luz Molina Lopez, Chair of the California Board of Accountancy's Legislative Committee, and I'd like to call this meeting to order. Let's start by taking roll call. Alicia?
Alicia Burhow.
Mary Jiang.
Nancy Corrigan.
Luz Molina Lopez.
Deirdre Robinson.
Great. With that, we have a quorum. Okay. Let's begin with agenda item number 1, which is approval of the minutes. Our first agenda item is for the approval of the minutes for March 21st, 2019 Legislative Committee meeting. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. Let's proceed with roll call. Sorry, thank you. Are there any discussions about this agenda item from the committee members or any comments from the public? Seeing none, let's proceed to roll call.
Okay, Alicia Burhow,
Yes.
Nancy Corrigan,
Yes.
Mary Jiang,
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines,
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez,
Yes,
Corolla Nicholson,
Abstain.
and Deirdre Robinson.
Abstain.
thank you. With that, the motion carries. Agenda item number 2 is the California Board of Accountancy 2019 Legislative Tracking Chart. This is a written report. Are there any comments from committee members about this written report? Or any comments from the public? Okay. All right, moving on, we have agenda item number 3, which is an update, discussion, and possible action on legislation on which the CBA has taken a position on. Mr. Bone, would you like to begin with us?
Thank you, Madam Chair. First item is 3A, Assembly Bill 193, which requires the Department of Consumer Affairs, or DCA, to conduct a comprehensive review of all licensing requirements for each profession. It also eliminates certain licensing requirements related to barbering, cosmetology, and custom upholstery. Recent amendments since the last meeting, Madam Chair, added a biennial reporting requirement for DCA boards related to their activities that ensure license portability for active duty service members, veterans, and military spouses. This bill missed a legislative deadline, is now a 2-year bill, Madam Chair, and staff recommend CBA maintain their watch position. I'll turn it back to you.
Any discussion on this bill from committee members? I had a question. We are pretty organized, and do we already have information with this regard that we keep just for our own tracking?
Yes, I'm not sure to what format that's organized. That might be a better question answered by in licensing, but I understand we have relatively few individuals who apply for military-based licenses or military inactive status or that thing. So it's a very small quantity of our licensee population.
Okay.
We can, sorry if I could just interrupt. We keep stats on that, and we provide the information to DCA. I think they collect it on an annual basis, so I'm happy to provide that information to you or the full committee.
Mm-hmm. That would be great. Thank you.
So no action is required on this, Madam Chair, if they wish to maintain the position.
So do we maintain this position? Does anybody want to change? No? Sounds good. So that's that. Item 3B.
Thank you. This is AB 312, which requires each state agency to review its regulations and identify any that are duplicative, overlapping, or out of date. Again, Madam Chair, we recommend the CBA maintain their watch position and no action is required if the LC wishes to do so.
Thank you. Any comments on this one? Okay. Let's move on to the next one.
AB 476 requires DCA to create a task force to study and report and issue a report regarding the licensing of professionals trained outside the United States and issue a report to the legislature. Again, Madam Chair, we recommend the CBA maintain their watch position. No action is required if you wish to do so.
Thank you. I did have a question on the accreditation process. I'm not sure if you have any insight that you can provide for how that occurs.
I would have to, so, no, not off the top of my head, Madam Chair. I would be happy to look at that and get back to you.
Thank you. I'd appreciate that. So our current position is to watch. If we want to maintain that position, any discussion on this? Okay, moving on.
Item D, Assembly Bill 613 creates a new process that authorizes a DCA board to adjust its fees once every 4 years according to an increase in the California Consumer Price Index. Madam Chair, as directed by the CBA during the last meeting, I've been in communication with the author's office on the following topics. One, how would this interact with a statutory cap on fees? And two, how might this change be implemented in practice, including the effective date of when such a fee increase may take effect? The author's staff has indicated, first of all, they appreciated the questions and the engagement of the board, and they've indicated they plan to amend the bill at a future time in consideration of these questions and other issues that have been raised by stakeholders. The CBA currently has a support position, Madam Chair. We recommend maintaining that.
Great.
I have a quick question.
Oh,
Is
yes,
it going to go through this year, or is it a 2-year bill?
No, it's an active bill. It's over in the
Okay.
Senate right now.
Okay.
Any comments on maintaining the support position? Okay, seeing none, we can move on.
Item 3E is Assembly Bill 802, which requires state and local agencies to submit reports to the legislature electronically rather than by paper. It also requires state agencies to separately publish the data that they use to create their reports. Recent amendments changed the data reporting requirement, and currently now the bill requires state agencies to post their data on the State of California's Open Data Portal or another data repository designated by the Government Ops Agency. We project minor cost savings related to print and delivery costs, but perhaps a minor increase in staff workload related to the publishing of the data. Since the analysis was prepared, AB 802 was approved by the full assembly, is now in the Senate, pending referral to a policy committee. Madam Chair, we recommend maintaining the watch position and no action is required.
Thank you. Any comments on this one? Okay. Next.
AB 931, since the prior meeting, Madam Chair and members, AB 931 has been substantially amended and now only applies to boards or commissions of a city with a population of at least 50,000 people. According to the author's office, the bill is intended to encourage women to engage in the political process and be better prepared to run for public office. The author believes that local boards and commissions provide the best opportunity for these individuals to gain that experience. As indicated in attachment 2 of this item, I did pose 2 questions to the author's office. Have they considered the matter of ethnic diversity? And what might occur if a board or commission lacks a quorum due to the requirements of the bill? I've been in dialogue with their office. They've yet to give me a response to those questions. But however, Madam Chair, because the bill now only applies to local bodies and no longer affects state boards or commissions, staff recommend that we discontinue our watch position.
Okay. Thank you. So if we do discontinue watching this and we do get responses to our questions on attachment 2, how would we get that information?
That could be communicated through multiple channels, perhaps an EO report, perhaps, if something else were to occur that would cause it to be brought back to a future CBA meeting, that would continue to be an option.
Okay, because I am interested in the responses to our questions. However, I do understand that this type of bill no longer applies to our board, and I do see that we can discontinue watching it. Any comment?
Yeah, it could, but I see where you're going with this, and it could apply to us in the future. So, but I would go along with staff recommendation to withdraw or discontinue following the bill.
Thank you. Can I get a second?
Second.
Any comments, any further comments from the committee? Or any comments from the public? Okay, let's do roll call.
Deirdre Robinson,
Yes.
Corolla Nicholson. Luz Molina Lopez,
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines. Mary Jiang,
Yes.
Nancy Corrigan,
Yes.
and Alicia Burhow.
Yes.
All right. Let's move on to item G.
That's AB 1140, which imposes a new requirement upon tax preparers who are registered with the California Tax Education Council, or CTEC. This bill does not impact CBA licensees. Since the last meeting, Madam Chair, the bill was amended to, as follows, to require this disclosure include a statement that anyone with income less than $66,000 may be eligible for free in-person tax preparation through a service offered by the Internal Revenue Service, that all itemized costs and fees for the preparation of taxes must be disclosed in a table format, as well as include the tax preparer's federal ID number. Further, the amendments require now the Franchise Tax Board to develop a model disclosure form that will be published on its website, and it designates the FTB as the agency responsible for enforcing this provision. Staff recommend the CBA maintain its support position, and no action is required if the committee wishes to do so.
Thank you. Any comments? Okay, let's move on.
H is AB 1521. Madam Chair, this is the CBA sunset bill. On April 8th, the bill was amended to include the following provisions. First, to allow the CBA to electronically distribute the update newsletter. Second, to require all applicants and licensees provide a valid email address to the CBA. Third, allow the CBA to deny an applicant for initial licensure if that person was disciplined by the federal government, the Public Company Accounting Oversight Board, or another country for any act substantially related to the functions, qualifications, or duties of a CPA. To delete the term fiduciary from the statute added by Assembly Bill 2138 from last year, which requires the CBA to develop regulations that authorize the denial of an application for initial licensure if that applicant committed certain felony financial crimes. It also includes a non-substantive amendment to Business and Professions Code Section 5100.1. On Tuesday, April 30th, CBA staff met with staff from the Senate and Assembly Business and Professions Committees to discuss the CBA's request to increase the statutory maximum of its initial licensure and renewal fees, and to discuss as well the CBA's fund condition. Earlier this week, committee staff provided comments to the CBA staff regarding the CBA's request relative to its fees. With your permission, Madam Chair, staff recommend that we defer discussion on this aspect of the CBA's fees to item 3B under the report of the Secretary Treasurer.
Thank you. I do agree with that. I know we have a hefty discussion coming up about fees. Anything else to comment on this action?
I would just add, therefore, staff recommend we maintain our watch position.
Okay.
Excuse me, support position. Forgive me.
Support.
Thank you.
Anything else to say on this one? Okay.
Item I, Assembly Bill 1525. This bill states that a CPA or an accounting firm does not commit a crime under California law solely for providing professional accounting services to persons engaged in commercial cannabis activity. The bill also requires certain cannabis data to be shared with financial institutions and provides a safe harbor for financial institutions that do business with the commercial cannabis industry. In addition to what I provided in the analysis, I wish to add the following, Madam Chair. AB 1525 is now a two-year bill, as it did not receive approval by the Assembly Business and Professions Committee prior to the April 26th Policy Committee deadline. Further, I'd like to note that the following organizations are in support of the bill, which is the California Credit Union League, the Rural County Representatives of California, which is an association that represents rural counties in California, and the Southern California Coalition. Staff recommend the CBA maintain their watch position, and no action is needed at this time, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Bone, sorry, can you explain to me again the two-year bill? Does this mean this will be on hold until next year?
Correct. The bill, absent rule waivers, which are very uncommon, would be eligible to be taken up in January of next year.
Okay.
And if it failed to be approved in its House of Origin, so if the Assembly failed to approve that bill next January, then that bill would be dead.
Got it. All right, so let's maintain watch position on this bill unless there's any comments or questions on this one. Okay, let's move on.
J is Assembly Bill 1545, which requires state agencies to help a small business comply with the statutes and regulations administered by that state agency and in any enforcement actions. It also requires agencies to create a policy that provides for the reduction of civil penalties for a small business based upon specified mitigating factors. Madam Chair, we recommend staff maintain this. Staff recommend the CBA maintain their watch position, and no action is required if you wish to do so.
Okay. I do see on recent amendments, now there is a definition for what they would consider, what would be considered a small business. This is something new, right? The first time we saw this bill, this wasn't part of that?
They changed the definition. It did include well, I believe the bill has a few criteria, but one of the element that was changed in those amendments changed the threshold from revenues of $10 million or less to $15 million or less over a 3-year period. The other amendment excluded the California Department of Tax and Fee Administration, so the taxing authorities are exempt under the bill.
Got it. Okay. Any comments or questions on this one? Let's move on.
Pardon me. Senate Bill 51 is item K, which would establish cannabis limited charter banks and cannabis limited charter credit unions to provide limited banking services to the cannabis industry. Since the March meeting, the bill was amended as discussed on page 2 of the analysis. Most notable among the amendments is that this program will become inactive if the federal government removes cannabis from the list of controlled substances or enacts legislation to allow financial institutions to provide services to the legitimate cannabis industry. Stopped. Staff recommend the CBA maintain their watch position and no action is required at this time.
Any questions on this one?
Go
Go
I
ahead.
have a question. This is kind of a highly contested issue. Where does it sit?
The bill right now is in the Senate Appropriations Committee, I believe. Let me just check where it is as of today. So the bill received approval in its policy committee and is set to be actually considered today on what's called the suspense file. So the suspense file is the place where every bill that costs any money that goes through, it's in suspense, and then they take up all those hundreds of bills at a given day. Coincidentally, today is the day. So after today, we'll know whether or not the bill is going to continue this year or will become a 2-year bill.
I just wanted to comment that our state has approved cannabis as, an approved industry, yet there is still a Title I substance, so it's a federal offense. And that puts us in a very strange position on supporting anything. The industry cannot do banking, and therefore we're kind of in a limbo that is interesting and maybe a topic for another discussion on where does that leave us as a group that protects the consumer if the consumer, if the industry cannot bank in a regulated bank, how does that help us protect consumers at all? I don't have the answer, and evidently a lot of people don't either. Yeah.
And that's precisely the intent of the author and the sponsor, and they're trying to carve out a little piece of state law that would allow those businesses to become banked, to enter into a state-specific banking authority, if you will.
Regulatory authority, so that
Yes.
way there would be some kind of accountability and.
Yes, and particularly with the remission of taxes, since largely taxes are paid through cash.
Yes. Thank you.
No, I personally want this cannabis bank, so whether, I'm good right now with keeping a watch position. I feel like if we were able to get a cannabis bank in California, it would protect consumers as well as our CPAs who are now involved in this business. So I'm going to be interested in seeing how this bill moves forward. I totally get where you're coming from about how it being contentious, but I think this would provide a lot of consumer protection
I agree.
for the public, so.
Yeah.
Do we have a sense of how how the federal wave is moving towards having banks that would allow or being able to use banks for these types of contentious industries?
The best answer I can give to that is that there had been hearings specifically on this particular matter. I know Fiona Ma, who's a licensee and is the state treasurer, who's a sponsor of the bill, has in recent weeks traveled to Capitol Hill and has testified about this issue. Beyond that, what the momentum is on that federally, I couldn't comment further.
Because it does seem, I mean, we're not the only state that has legalized this industry. There's other
39
states.
states.
And it
Yeah.
seems like there is the momentum for further states to approve it as well. So I'm just curious, you know.
It's
what
gaining
the-
momentum. It is definitely gaining momentum between, from what she said, it's 39 states, whether it's legal cannabis or medicinal cannabis. And so they're looking to California and other states that have, that legalized cannabis before we did about how they're doing this. So it's getting there. I can see the tide moving. How fast it'll move is another story.
Ms. Hines?
Is this something which the professional agencies might have some perspective that they can share about what other states are doing that have legalized cannabis and maybe are trying to address the issue? I didn't want to put you on blast.
Jason Fox with the California Society of CPAs. I think it's definitely, I know a number of state boards and other state legislators have weighed in on what it means for CPAs and other licensees serving cannabis clients. I think the profession wants to serve the client, this industry, and I think there's definitely a need to do it. I think the banking is one of the major hurdles just overall for a variety of issues. I think there would be an interest from the profession to kind of get a little bit of clarity on what it means for their license to serve a cannabis client, because there is the question of, yes, California law says it's okay, but their federal government says it's not. And so if you are a CPA serving that client, there is a question of, are you violating any professional standards doing this? I would say a lot of CPAs are doing this work. Some have held off because of that question. From the Cal CPA and the profession standpoint, we've kind of taken the tact of trying to educate our licensees or our members of, the issues related to tax audit and all the nuanced areas of serving this type of client. So I don't know if that answers your question, but it's definitely a tricky topic.
I ask because as the body that oversees the practice and also has the primary responsibility of protecting the public, but then oversees the practice, I think that we are in the position of exhibiting some leadership around, what the path forward will be. And I think having conversations around pieces of legislation that come up like this enables us to really think through what some of the policies are going to be, because I think we are responsible for making decisions. We may not make the quote-unquote right decisions, but I do think that that the industry is looking to us to provide some guidance and some leadership on this. And I think the consumer is looking to us to provide guidance and leadership on, how we're viewing this industry, not just today, but, going forward. Because this is definitely moving in a direction. It's probably not going to go back, to where it was before, but it is moving in a direction. And I don't think it's in our best interest to sit back and wait and watch. I think it's our responsibility to to be proactive, on it. So,
Absolutely.
so while the watch position, I think for right now is appropriate, I think at some point we are going to, as a body, have to step out and make some decisions about guiding the direction of the practice, both for licensees as well as for consumers.
And I would have to agree with that, and I would love to see if we could get the treasurer to come in and chat with us about this. I think this is a long overdue, and I like the idea of us taking the lead on it rather than kind of being behind the scenes.
I think that's an excellent idea, and I'm a little disappointed in myself for not having thought of it, but but I think inviting the treasurer to come in, especially since she has put up a bill, or inviting her to come in and talk to us about the leadership that we can exhibit in this would be helpful.
And if I may, I think that the banking question and the issue that SB 51 is trying to solve is a very complex and very, beyond just the CPA and accounting profession issue. But I think the prior bill, SB or AB 1525, Aaron, yes.
Yes.
I think was one of the ones that tried to seek providing some safe harbor kind of protections for licensees that serve financial services for accounting or for cannabis clients. So I think that might be an area where the board would have some, as you mentioned, leadership possibilities to kind of explore. And those are conversations that we've had internally and with staff to a certain degree. So.
I have a question. Thank you, Mr. Fox, for your presentation. And my question goes to a comment that you just made, and that was the fact that we're walking, this is my interpretation, a very thin line between federal regulations and what we can do in the state and how we can protect not only our consumers, but the CPAs that serve them. How do you track that? Is there a checklist? How does that proceed, and how can we as a board support that process?
I would need to do my homework on that to answer your question, but I mean, there are some best practices for serving cannabis clients and, obviously working with, legal counsel and all the different aspects of doing that. I think that the question is, what does it mean for your license if you're serving a client that is a potentially
Yes.
federally illegal
Yes.
thing? So, and that's where I think that there's a question, and the board could possibly weigh in to kind of.
Is there some
clarify.
information or data that could be provided so that we can better understand
We could-
what those issues would be?
Certainly, yeah, we could get that.
Okay.
I wonder if this type of discussion, it goes beyond this bill and beyond this legislative committee, and it would be something that perhaps as a whole board, we would want to start including discussions regarding the changes in cannabis and the industry and how we may move towards being leaders and providing guidance.
I think the Committee on Professional Conduct, would be one committee that
Could take this on.
should be
Right.
taking this on, because there is an ethics component, from the perspective of the licensee. I can't think of all of the specifics of how the ethics issues are, all the ethics issues that are raised, but I can see how there's an ethics issue, component that's there. So, definitely that's one committee that could be looking at it, not just from the perspective of this banking issue, but more broadly from the, perspective of representation of clients that are dealing in an industry that is federally regulated in a way that is contrary to state laws. I mean, it's really, that's broad, but I
Right.
believe that there are a number of different
Yeah, there's a lot.
ways
to
that it can be
involve there.
implicated, yeah.
And I'm also wondering if NASPA might have some input or insight, or committees that are also developing work or process in that manner.
Good point.
Okay, so pulling it back to our maintaining a watch position on this, I do feel, my sense is that we may move towards a support position at some point. Is it too early to do so now? Shall we maintain our watch position? Okay.
So moved.
So we will maintain our watch position, but I do agree on maintaining the discussion, continuing the discussion. It would be wonderful if the author of the bill would be able to provide some further insight. And then if we do move towards more of a supportive position, I would also welcome that in the future.
And to clarify, the insight you would wish the author's office to provide would be what, Madam Chair?
So we had mentioned asking the treasurer something specific. Was there a specific or just coming in and
Yeah, I think the suggestion was invite to Treasurer Fiona Ma to explain more of the bills that she proposed, and I agree that maybe we would move to a more stronger support position after listening to her presentation.
So I guess it would be to have her come and sell it to us essentially so that we can move forward.
What's the location of our July meeting? Is it in LA? Okay. I mean, that's not far from where Senator Hertzberg is. Maybe, it's an opportunity to bring both of them in if they're available for our July meeting.
Yeah, perhaps that would be the way to approach. The author would be that we are interested in perhaps moving towards a support position. And we would like to hear more personally from, if possible.
Can I recommend to Patty and, well, what we would take to the board as a report, and, Patty could help us with this, is extending the invitation to Treasurer Ma and potentially Senator Hertzberg specifically on this bill, but to come and speak to the entire board and to have this bill and maybe some others that either are, in the legislature or, that maybe touch on other areas regarding, cannabis, the banking and industry of cannabis, whether they could come and make a broader presentation to the board. Because I think that, that the information that they would present would be, more educational and beneficial to the greater board. And that could then inform our committee's decision as to whether to
Absolutely.
change our position or not.
Absolutely, I do agree with that. Also, I think, as you mentioned, Ms. Hines, we should probably be more proactive as a board, move to the forefront of this type of discussion. And if having these people invited to come to talk to us, it would also, further our decision to be more proactive and be in the forefront. Any more comments on this?
If I may, Madam Chair, it was several remarks ago, but Ms. Robinson, in response to your comment, we do provide on our website guidance to our licensees with a cannabis webpage where we have links to different state and federal resources and agencies and regulatory authorities. So we do provide some level of information currently to our licensees who are looking for information about service to the cannabis industry.
And as those regulatory issues change, are they updated in real time, or how does this work?
So we provide links out to the Cannabis Control Bureau, to the Department of Tax. So all the different, the issue of cannabis at the state level is regulated by multiple agencies. So we
Right.
provide direct links out to those different websites. So that way then, as new issues come forth for Department of Food and Ag on a cultivation issue, then they can go kind of straight to the source for the latest information.
Is there a link that directs them to federal information as well?
I believe the
think that was my
IRS
biggest
I bel-
concern.
Excuse me, I mean to talk over here. I believe the IRS, we have links to relevant information that they provide. I'd have to look further, though.
And I will too as well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Great. So,
One more thing, Luz, I was wondering if we could have a little more information on what other states are doing, not only in the banking area, but also in trying to guide our profession.
thank you. So again, I think that would be something that, I don't know if it falls within our committee. Perhaps it would be for, as was said, the CPC committee, or as a board, for the board as a whole. I don't know if, Patty, can you chime in on that?
We'll explore either adding it to the agenda for the CPC or the full board one.
Great, perfect, thank you. Okay, so let's move on to, oh, I lost track, was that L?
L, yes. Senate Bill 53, that amends the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act to state that two-member advisory committees are considered to be a state body, therefore requiring them to comply with the various provisions of the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act. Madam Chair, the CBA has conducted a fiscal analysis of the bill, and we believe the cost to comply with it would range in the low few thousands of dollars annually. Since the prior CBA meeting, as requested by the LC, I reached out twice, actually to the Office of the President of the University of California, to inquire about their position on this bill. The LC asked me to do so because discussions between the prior governor and the president of the university were cited by the author as an example of meetings that should have been subjected to the Open Meeting Act. Unfortunately, Madam Chair, they've not yet responded to my requests for information. Staff recommend the CBA maintain its opposed position on the bill, but we also request the CBA approve the following amendments that we would then bring forth to the author's office. One, exempt from the bill any communications, discussions, or meetings between staff of the CBA, DCA, or elsewhere within the governor's administration, and a single member of the CBA or CBA committee. 2, exempt from the bill peer review oversight committee administrative site visits associated with an entity that administers a peer review program to ensure the entity is operating in accordance with standards adopted by the CBA. And 3rd, to continue to allow 2 CBA members or 2 CBA committee members to participate in outreach events or discussions with the legislature. I'll turn it back to you, Madam Chair, for discussion or comment.
So let's continue with our legislative committee meeting. I believe we were discussing, we had finished the motion on L. Was there anything further on this one? Okay, let's move on to LC item 3N. Mr. Bone?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senate Bill 601 authorizes a state agency that issues a license to reduce or waive fees required for licensure renewal or to replace a physical license for an individual displaced by an emergency. Madam Chair, I'd just like to add, in addition to the information, the bill has the support of the Board of Behavioral Sciences, the Chamber of Commerce, the Dental Association, and other organizations. Staff recommend the CBA maintain their support position, and no action is required if you wish to do so.
Thank you. Any comments or questions on this? Seeing none, we can move on.
Item N is Assembly Bill 1271, which requires DCA on or after January 1 of 2021 to provide a report to the legislature that contains certain information related to licensing examinations for each licensed professional and vocation under their jurisdiction. This is a spot bill, according to the author's office, Madam Chair, and is also a 2-year bill. So therefore, staff recommend we maintain the CBA's watch position.
Any questions or comments from the committee? Seeing none, we will maintain our watch position.
Moving on to item 4, so these are new bills that before the board. The first is Assembly Bill 63. This bill would require an agency that serves or furnishes information to the public or engages in activity that involves public contact to provide a plain language online form that allows the public to provide comments about the agency and assign them an A through F letter grade to rate their experience with that agency. The bill would also require agencies to allow an individual the option to display their comment or grade publicly amongst other public comments. Staff recommend a watch position on this bill, Madam Chair. I'll turn it back to you.
On this one, so this is, this would require us to update our website to allow the public to provide comments and a letter grade.
Yes, so we presently allow, there are other laws that are currently in effect which we are in compliance with that allow an individual to offer a complaint. We also have our stakeholder feedback survey, which is available, and we receive a number of comments, each year from individuals. This would provide a new requirement that would require agencies to surface, make it more public, if you will, the information, the complaints, and the grades that are received by the public.
And I imagine it would be the same for other boards, and so it would be uniform across California boards.
It may look different from agency to agency, but all agencies would have the same requirement. How that looks in practice may differ from agency to agency.
Okay. And is the stakeholder survey, is that also conducted via the website?
It is. It's accessible through our website. We promote it in a number of different ways. It's hosted by, we use a company called SurveyMonkey, who we contract with, and they're the actual host of that survey.
Got it. Any questions, any discussion on this? So staff is recommending that we watch this bill. May I have a motion?
Move to watch AB 63.
Second.
Any comments from the public? Okay. Can we have a roll call on this?
Deirdre Robinson,
Yes.
Carola Nicholson,
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez,
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines.
Yes.
Mary Jiang,
Yes.
Nancy Corrigan,
Yes.
and Alicia Burhow.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you. Mr. Bone?
Next item is Assembly Bill 5535, that is, which would allow a taxpayer beginning January 1 of 2020 to claim a credit against their state income taxes for the costs paid or incurred to obtain a qualified initial license, professional license as defined. The bill states that only licenses granted by certain California agencies would qualify for this tax credit, and the Board of Accountancy is not presently listed amongst those qualified boards. I spoke with the author's office about that, and they indicated they believed it would be easier to obtain support for their bill by starting with a very small number of boards. Therefore, they chose boards that would have a particular impact to their district by selecting those related to health, mental health, and housing issues. This is a 2-year bill, but the author's office indicated they will hold meetings in the fall to consider whether or not to include other boards in this bill. I'd like to note, Madam Chair, this bill does not impact the CBA's consumer protection mission. Therefore, staff do not have a recommended position on the bill. I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you. I did catch that the bill specifies that the tax credit would be operative for 5 years. Do you happen to know what would happen after 5 years?
It would essentially become inoperative, like a sunset, if you will.
Oh, okay.
And there's some study provisions in the bill. The legislature is interested now when certain tax credits are offered, that there is a requirements to look back and see the effectiveness of it. Did it achieve its intended public policy purpose?
Okay. Were we contacted at all when they were deciding which certain licensing boards would be included, would be part of this?
No,
They
they did not.
just
They did not
decided-
reach out to us. We found the bill through our normal course, and then I made contact with them.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Young.
Yeah, I'm not sure, why did they offer, say, a tax credit for, let's say, I understand them trying to start out with a smaller group of professions, but doesn't it make sense that you offer to a certain population but not all licensees across the board?
I'm not sure if I understand your question.
Well, I feel that if they get a tax credit and we don't, and we are as a disadvantage against that profession that gets a tax credit for, they have to renew or get qualified for their license, and they get a tax credit, and the CPA profession doesn't, or any other profession that's like needs licensing doesn't get a tax credit. Doesn't seem fair, does it?
It's difficult for me to comment on what's fair and what isn't fair, but that's the approach that they chose to take, and they've indicated that they, in part, the reason why it's now a 2-year bill is so that way they can have further discussions and consider whether or not to add additional professional licenses.
They're trying to cook the bill, so they're still trying to add ingredients and try and make something of it, so I'm not worried about this yet. I'm very curious to see what's gonna happen in the fall, but they're still trying to figure it out.
Did you have a comment, Ms. Corrigan?
Well, I was just going to say, over time, and we have seen this, time and time again, sometimes there are credits and benefits that are provided to lower income or whatever disadvantaged groups, and that those are not thought to be discriminatory. It's just to help people that are having a tough time or whatever, and so they're maybe just starting small, and as you're suggesting, where will that build to? That remains to be seen, so.
So we don't have a recommendation from staff, but I would like to make a motion to watch this one. Can I have a second on that, or any comments? Thank you. Any further comments on this? Any comments on, from the public? Okay, roll call.
Alicia Burhow,
Yes.
Nancy Corrigan,
Yes.
Mary Jiang,
Yes.
Carrie-Ann Farrell-Hines.
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez,
Yes,
Corolla Nicholson,
Yes.
and Deirdre Robinson.
Yes.
thank you. Motion carries. Let's move on to 4C.
Thank you, Madam Chair. AB 544 would limit the maximum fee for a renewal of a license in an inactive status to no more than 50% of the renewal fee for an active license. This bill would also prohibit a board or bureau from requiring payment of accrued and unpaid renewal fees as a condition of reinstating an expired license or registration. As noted on pages 2 and 3 of the analysis, AB 544 is expected to reduce CBA revenues by approximately $954,000 annually. Due to the impact the bill would have on the CBA's budget and its authority to set its fees, staff recommend the CBA adopt an opposed position. And I'll turn it back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Do we have any comments or any discussion on this?
So moved to approve.
Seconded.
Thank you. Any comments from the public?
Oh.
Ms. Hines?
Should we provide some feedback about our opposed position on the bill, even if it's just to say to let the authors know that we are looking at our fee structure through other methods, and that this effort would interfere with our evaluation of our licensing fees, and that's why in opposition to this bill that's why we're taking the opposing position to this bill.
I think that's a fantastic idea.
Yeah, and actually undercut the whole relevance of other boards that do think about how to set fees and govern their groups, so.
Yeah, there are other boards that are currently opposing it as well. I'm looking through the literature here. Do we know specifically why they are opposing it?
I don't have the letters in front of me, but I would surmise it's for similar reasons.
I would agree.
Yeah.
Okay, so, let's see, do we need to restate the motion to include recommending? No? Okay. So the motion on the floor is to adopt the recommendation to oppose.
Yes.
We have seconded that. So any further comments or questions? Anything from the public? Seeing none, we can do roll call.
Deirdre Robinson,
Yes.
Corolla Nicholson.
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez,
Yes?
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines.
Yes.
Mary Jiang,
Yes.
Nancy Corrigan,
Yes.
and Alicia Verhow.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Bum?
The next item is Assembly Bill 1076. Under current law, if an individual wishes to have their arrest or criminal conviction records sealed or dismissed, that person must first petition the Superior Court and follow established procedures. According to the author of this bill, that is a burdensome process for those who are being denied unemployment or housing opportunities due to their criminal history. This bill largely takes that judicial petition-based process and transforms it into an administrative process that is owned and managed by the California Department of Justice, or DOJ. The bill establishes criteria for those eligible to have their records sealed or have past convictions dismissed. It then requires DOJ to automate the process to seal eligible records or dismiss eligible convictions. With limited exceptions, the bill prohibits DOJ from disclosing to other parties information concerning an arrest or conviction that has been sealed or dismissed. Because applicants may already pursue these changes to their arrest or conviction records through the judicial process, staff do not anticipate this bill will impact the CBA's review or approval of applications for licensure. Therefore, Madam Chair, we recommend a watch position on this bill. I will turn it back to you for comments or discussion.
Thank you. Any comments from the committee? Okay. Staff recommends a watch position. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Any comments or questions from the public? Let's do roll call.
Alicia Verhow,
Yes.
Nancy Corrigan,
Yes.
Mary Jiang,
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines.
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez,
Yes.
Corolla Nicholson,
Yes.
and Deirdre Robinson.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Bum?
Finally, Madam Chair, Assembly Bill 1181. This bill requires financial records of certain solicitations for charitable purposes to be maintained according to specific accounting standards apart from generally accepted accounting principles, or GAAP. Further, the bill prohibits a charitable organization from reporting its non-cash contributions in a way that is misleading or likely to cause confusion. Finally, the bill removes the American Institute of CPAs and the Government Accounting Standards Boards from the list of organizations that establish GAAP for purposes of accounting for these non-cash contributions. To further explain, Madam Chair, current law requires a charitable organization that solicits donations to maintain them on the basis of GAAP. AB 1181 creates a limited exception to that requirement in cases where the charitable organization has received a non-cash contribution, or a gift in kind, as it's often referred to, from a donor who has required that that contribution be used outside of the United States. In such situations, AB 1181 requires the contribution to be valued using the fair value of the end market recipient, or a reasonable estimate of that valuation if the end recipient market value cannot be determined after a reasonable effort. If the end recipient market is unknown at the time the contribution is received, then the charitable organization shall value that contribution using the markets in which the contribution is likely to be distributed or used. This bill is sponsored by the California Attorney General, who believes this change is necessary to curb deceptive practices whereby a charity assigns a value for the donation based upon the United States fair market value for products that are not intended to be distributed or used within the United States. In those cases, an organization would appear, according to the Attorney General's office, to have revenues or assets far greater than they actually do, making it appear more successful and efficient than the organization truly is, and helping to hide excessive fundraising and administrative costs. The bill analysis in your meeting materials provides 2 examples that are offered by the Attorney General's office. This bill has received a number of concerns from the accounting community, including CalCPA and the Financial Accounting Foundation. Their letters are among the attachments to this item. Their views are summarized on pages 3 and 4 of the analysis, but in short, express significant concerns about using the legislative process to alter accounting standards. They argue that this bill undermines GAAP and that the best way to address any deficiencies in these valuations is through the existing process to revise GAAP. According to the Financial Accounting Foundation, that process is already underway. Further, CalCPA has requested that rather than pursue the change currently in the bill, that the author should instead amend the bill to require relevant organizations to disclose these donations in alternate ways. Madam Chair, CBA staff recommend watch position on the bill and do suggest that if the members have comments or feedback for the author or the sponsor, that they consider sending a comment letter. That concludes my remarks.
Thank you. Do we have any discussion? Alicia?
So my question would be, given the concerns, why would we take a watch position versus an opposed position?
That is certainly the board's prerogative to choose the position they wish.
Why did you recommend watch? Why was there?
I think there are compelling arguments on both sides of the bill. The Attorney General's office believes that they're trying to solve a particular niche problem, balanced against the accounting standards and the process whereby that is developed.
Yes.
And I'm not sure about the sensitivity of watch versus an oppose. I know that much goes into that, but I do believe there are times when, and I think this is one of them, where we need to be more definite about where we stand on something of this nature. It is so non-traditional to suggest removing GASB and the AICPA from our standard setters and our guidelines for accountants and auditors and for organizations that are trying to apply the rules, and for investors and contributors that are trying to read and digest information and decide, is this a viable organization for me to contribute my significant funds? It is so non-traditional to approach being radical to dismiss GASB, which is Government Accounting Standards Board. I mean, think about California and who we are in the organizations, the nonprofit industry. Nonprofit organizations that receive government funding follow GASB. We can't dismiss GASB. How would we function? Government agencies follow GASB. Hospitals, other organizations follow government accounting standards and auditing guidelines for auditors. And it would just, I think the confusion and everything that would cause would do so much more harm than following some examples and ideas in CalCPA's and the FAF's letter where some disclosures, would help a great deal. And it sounds like this project is undergoing, and if everybody waits and is patient and sees what evolves, we can all then chime in, as one of the letters suggests, and give our feedback. If an exposure draft is issued, we can all jump on board and write letters and say, yes, we agree, we disagree. But to do something so radical, to think even that other states or that California too, who knows what other positions, but just think of the hodgepodge we would have if we didn't have national standards. I mean, it is a real concern to me, and I believe we should recommend that our board take an opposed position, but with a letter, we need to voice ourselves and as to why, and how we will also help iron this issue out.
Thank you.
Yes, I would have to agree that we should look at an opposed position rather than a watch. And then, I don't know if CalCPA can discuss it, but is there any wiggle room in this bill to where, because I as someone who deals with this quite a bit, even an oppose unless amended type of thing? Or do you think it's just an oppose straight out to send a message to the author?
The reason Cal CPA took an oppose unless amended position is because we've been having conversations with the author's office and the Attorney General's office to see if we could potentially find a solution to the underlying concerns that they're trying to address. Our principal concern is the solution that's put forward by Attorney General, which changes the valuation metrics in which Ms. Corrigan laid out. And so wiggle room, I don't know, it's, we'll continue to have dialogues, but I think it's important for this board to weigh in certainly strongly that there's some concerns as, the regulator of CPAs in California.
Yes.
I think also taking an articulated opposed position as to the fact that this is a law that is changing a method of valuation that could have, much broader ramifications and could complicate and confuse a very technical area of the practice. I admit I don't understand completely the depths of the change, but from a legal perspective, from a precedent-setting perspective, I do have concerns about how other ways in which laws could be implicated if we were to just allow there to be these changes without really being clear about the other impacts that it could have. So I agree with my fellow board member, Ms. Corona, that we should articulate a specific opposition to it. I am hesitant, though, for us to articulate our opposition, wording our opposition similar to Cal CPA. I think that we as a body should articulate our own opposition to it. And I think that we have the professionals on our board that can help to draft the specific concerns about it, rather, because there's a risk of looking like we're rubber stamping, an opposition of another body. And we don't
want to do that.
Yeah, we don't want to do that, and I think we're capable of articulating our own opposition to it.
I volunteer Nancy to write that. You'll be
I don't
great.
have anything else.
I
You'll be
second
great.
that.
You'll be great.
I thought you were going to suggest Mr. Compost.
I recommend Mr. Compost to write that.
Oh, Mr. Campos and Ms. Corrigan can do jointly.
Okay, so I'm hearing that we are going to adopt or we wish to adopt an opposed position. Do we have a motion?
I move to oppose.
Second.
Thank you. And then also to provide a letter that articulates our decision. Any further comments? Any comments from the public? Okay, let's do roll call.
Deirdre Robinson,
Yes.
Corolla Nicholson,
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez. Yes. Carrie Ann Farrell Hines.
Yes.
Mary Jiang,
Yes,
Nancy Corrigan.
Yes.
And Alicia Burton.
Yes.
With that, the motion carries. Okay, now agenda item number 5. This is review and possible consideration of positions on legislation that the CBA is monitoring. Mr. Bone?
No action is required on these items, Madam Chair.
Okay. I do see that there are several that are cannabis related, and so that does perk my interest. All right, so let's see. Agenda item number 6, legislative items for future meetings. Mr. Bone, do you have any comments related to this item?
No, Madam Chair.
Any comments from committee members? Any public comments? Okay, with that, I think agenda item number 8, agenda items for a next meeting. Do any members wish to request any items being placed on the next legislative committee agenda? Seeing none, that concludes our meeting. Thank you.